friends lived in a neighborhood that was intentionally built with no fences between the backyards. It was one of the things that drew them to that house because it felt so hospitable, with nothing standing between them and their neighbors. But when lawn mowing season came around, it became obvious why boundary lines can actually be good for relationships. Boundaries help us know what is ours to do and what isn't. They provide us with edges to guide and direct us. As youth workers, boundaries can release us to love well in ways that aren't going to be harmful to the youth or to us. Walking with young people over time can be exhausting, and we want to be sure that we consider a few things that will help you to care for teens and care for yourself. First, avoid extremes. At the edges, poor boundaries might mean being over-involved in dependence-creating ways or holding back with rigidity in an attempt to protect ourselves from being used or taken advantage of. Both of these are actually harmful to the youth and come out of our need to feel important or safe. When we're frustrated with the youth because our needs are feeling unmet, it's a clear sign that we haven't created healthy, balanced boundaries to define how and why we involve ourselves with young people. Second, ask, don't tell. Research shows that young people today are more inclined to look to adults to manage their lives, to clear the way for them. Although it feels good to step in and provide the answers, this can rob teens of the chance to learn and grow. You might even be really sure that you know what they should do, but hold back. Always lead with a question first, like, what do you think? Or how do you think that that would help or harm the situation? Whether it's conversation about relationships or the future or faith, we need to be aware of never pressuring a youth to make the decisions that we would. Instead, we get to love unconditionally along the journey as we invite them to reflect, question, and discover. It may take longer, but truth that is discovered is the truth that remains. Third, set your availability. As a young youth worker, I remember telling a teen that I would drop everything if she ever needed me. What I didn't understand in that moment was that she felt she needed me a lot. Our desire to communicate that we genuinely care can sometimes create a dependence that's actually harmful. If a youth's needs overshadow our other responsibilities, including our responsibility to rest, we may need to consider setting a few boundaries around availability. You might tell a teen, I'd love to hear from you, but I probably won't respond immediately, and I definitely won't respond after 10 p.m. I want to give your texts my full attention. Explain that having some set times for connecting doesn't mean you care less. It actually means that for those spaces of time, you are choosing them. Fourth, know your role. Your students have plenty of peers to be friends with. What they need is an adult to care about them and have fun with them while showing them what it can look like to be a healthy grown-up. The youth you work with are not your new BFFs. Things like special gifts or excessive messages that don't have a context like a birthday or a difficult life event slide away from a healthy boundary. Ask yourself, would a casual observer question or feel confused about your role when they see you interacting with the youth despite your good and pure intentions? Does it look like one youth stands out as your favorite? Those are great questions to use for a self-check. We also need to remember we're not their peer, but we're also not their counselor. Teens can carry some pretty heavy weights, and sometimes they need more than our listening ear. If a teen broke a leg, most of us aren't capable of setting the bone. We'd be looking for outside help and then support them in their healing. So ask your supervisor for places to connect teens to for deeper help, and then be the safe place where they can process that journey. Fifth, choose your words. As we share our lives in healthy ways, appropriate transparency is really important. Practicing appropriate transparency keeps us from sharing our stories as a way of processing our own stuff or venting our frustrations. Instead, it's a humble and purposeful way to say, I'm inviting you to see this part of my life because I suspect that in God's hands, this might be a helpful thing for you. Our stories are never meant to overshadow theirs, but they can provide a picture of how a healthy, imperfect, God-loving adult navigates everyday life. Purposefully communicating, doesn't just apply to your time with youth. It also needs to be a part of your relationship with your supervisor. We want to be sure that your youth work experience provides you with what you need to fully step into the invitation God has given you. But sometimes things get missed. So don't hesitate to ask for what you need, including guidance when you're unsure of what you should be doing or saying. Your supervisor would love to help you, but might not notice your uncertainty unless you tell them. Boundaries aren't about self-protection. They're about taking care of the things that we value so good things can happen. God has invited us into the lives of some precious teens, and He cares about our lives as well. Let's take the time to be intentional about building a relational space where both they and we can flourish.